Good evening and welcome to St. Paul. We are certainly elated and excited to be able to welcome you on this evening for what we believe is going to prove to be both needful and necessary conversation. You all seem a bit uptight, a bit stiff, but listen, we are simply providing a venue. We're not raising an offering tonight. That's a little bit better. That's a little bit better. But in all seriousness, when Joy asked us about hosting, we were certainly excited because we thought it appropriate to host this conversation in this space when we consider what we are called to do as a congregation, to concern ourselves with community, to actively engage in service. We certainly believe that is within the wheelhouse of the Divine Nine. Although we have different colors, different symbols, different signs, the things that we share in common is the realization that we have to engage ourselves in education and community uplift. So we are honored to be a part of the conversation on tonight. Let's pray together. Oh Lord our God, how excellent is thy name in all the earth. God, how grateful and how thankful we are to be able to gather together in this place, in this space, in this appointed period of time. God, it is not needful or necessary for us to tell you anything about what's going on in the city of Memphis. You already know. But God, our hearts are made glad tonight that citizens from across our city, those who are part of the Divine Nine, have taken of their time to come tonight that we might reason together and see can't we engage in collective conversation in order that our city might benefit and ultimately be blessed. God, we invoke and invite your presence on tonight because with all of our ideas, without your help, without your intervention, we cannot get the job done. So in the words of the old church, come on in the room. Be a part of our conversation, and we trust and believe it will prove to be both faithful and fruitful. We ask it all in the precious name of your Son and our Savior, Jesus the Christ. And everyone said together, amen. What a joy it is to be able to introduce our moderator for tonight. Of course, if you've been in Memphis at least 10 minutes, she is not a stranger. She is the weekend anchor and producer on Action News 5, as well as a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Would you help me welcome our moderator, Kelly Cook?
Good evening. So good to see you. Thank you so much for joining in this critical conversation here at St. Paul. We're so glad to have you with us. As we mentioned, my name is Kelly Cook. I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We got some Deltas in the house. Let me know where you at. Oh, I see. Yes. Thank you to Soror Chief Davis, Soror L.A. Webb, Soror Joy. I'm going to take all the privileges today, but I'm sure I'm not here. Other members of the Divine Nine, let me know where you are. Okay. Wait, no. Y'all kind of quiet. See? Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Before we get started, I want to do a quick explainer of the Divine Nine. We're all in here today, but I do not want to take for granted that maybe we don't understand what that means. So maybe listening, Okazukian, who's not here with us today. The Divine Nine is a National Panhellenic Council. So it is made up of 9 Black Greek-lettered organizations that have been around since 1906, where the Alphas at. Shout out to the Alphas, right? There you go. Thank you, Judge. Thank you. And it is a great partner for MPD to want to come together with the Divine Nine because there is a more than a century of examples of what these organizations have done in social action, right? From the suffragist movement to civil rights movement, to Black Lives Matter. We have a history of working on critical issues. So the fact that they're partnering with us in order to talk about this critical conversation is very appropriate, right? So before we get started, they made sure to let me know some ground rules we want to talk about before we get started. If anyone has questions, please motion to one of the team members who can bring a question card. You can raise your hand so we know who to, there you go. You can write your questions down and they will bring them to me to read. Bear in mind, we may not get to all of the questions. This is a forum for an honest, yet respectful, exchange. We know emotions are running high, especially when it comes to our children, but please, let's respect one another. So, let's get started with business at hand. We have two tracks of conversation this evening. The first is going to be youth and crime. That's who is up here right now. The second panel will be access and education. We've assembled a stellar group of Memphians who are well-versed in each topic and who, of course, are Divine Nine members. Welcome our first set of panelists, Chief C.J. Davis, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Please give her a round of applause. Let's all welcome Juvenile Court Judge Tarek Sugarman, member of Alpha Phi Alpha. And former police officer L.A. Webb, who is also a member of Delta Sigma Theta. Let's go ahead and get started here. And one thing about me, and specifically what I do for a living, I'm very big on context. Like, I want people to understand where we are. And juvenile crime is indeed a critical issue. So I want to start with you, Chief Davis. And if you could put this into perspective for us. The Memphis Shelby County Crime Commission estimates this year more than 500 juveniles will be charged with serious violent crimes. Can you give us just an example to set the stage of what day-to-day in dealing with juvenile crime is like here in Memphis?
So those numbers were really based on trends that we see. And over the last, I would say 12 months or so, what we do is we look at the trends and we see whether or not we are trending higher in various types of crimes, and we also analyze data to determine who's committing the crimes. And so to put it in context, what we're starting to see is more and more younger Memphians are involved in more serious types of criminal activity. The number 500 is probably a projection. We would like to do everything that we can to curtail that number between now and the end of the year. But this forum will help us to have discussions about how do we impact criminal activity beyond the law enforcement realm as well. Right now, we see more and more young people involved, as I said, in serious crimes, for instance, auto thefts. Today, we had discussions about auto thefts, and the average offender is between the age of 12 years old and 17 years old. Right there at the 16-year-old mark is where we see the peaks. And when we think in terms of trends and what we're accustomed to having to address, in the past it was mostly adults. So having to address crimes today where we're seeing more and more of our young people engaged and involved, and I'm sure we'll have more perspective from some of the other panelists, it puts a different, it puts us in a different position, and we have to adjust our approach too, because now we're not talking about, dealing with just adults. We're talking about children. When you think of a 12-year-old, you're thinking of somebody's baby. And, and the individuals that we have that are responding to these types of incidents are grown police officers. And we're having to train and adjust our thinking about how do we wrap our arms around the myriad of crimes and the numbers that continue to increase.
I'll continue with context. Thank you very much, Chief. I want to go to you, Judge Sugarman, because you are there, of course, at juvenile court, and you see firsthand. I was reading an article, Daily Memphian, in April, and they were mentioning the youngest, was it last year, that's come through and charged with a crime was 9. Like 9 years old. We're talking about a potential third grader out committing a crime. What trends are you seeing in juvenile court in terms of age and who is coming through that system?
Well, it's true that the ages are getting younger and younger, and as the total population of youth, some of the offenses are getting more and more violent. But I think we need to also make the distinction, as the chief said, between a serious offense and a violent offense. As she said, a lot of these are theft of properties. If it's over $10,000, such as a vehicle in most instances, then it is classified as a a serious crime, even though it may not be committed in a violent manner without the use of a weapon, carjacking. In the first quarter of 2023, of the 99 juveniles charged with a offense in the quote-unquote, the serious crime, not necessarily violent, and nonetheless it does include violent offenses, but of the 99 that have come to the system, only 19 were repeated. And so that's about an 18% reduction. Of the numbers of juveniles coming in for the broader category, nonviolent offenses, your theft of properties under 10,000, we are seeing that those numbers, about 70% do not reoffend. So we're good at least addressing those that have come into the system for the first time, keeping them coming back in. When you talk about it being a revolving door, we push back against that. What has been a revolving door are our counselors in the system. Right now, our counselors are being paid under $35,000. The state recently got a 5% increase to their budget, and they're now hiring counselors in the $60,000 range. Youth Villages, through their outreach program, they're paying in the $60,000 range. We can't compete with that. But nonetheless, with the loss of counselors that we have had, we've done an excellent job of, again, keeping the numbers down of repeat offenders. We can do better. We need more resources, and that's the bottom line. We really need more resources in the court.
And Judge Shagmar, I want to make sure that we're making this. When you say counselors, and what role do they play in your juvenile court? What are they doing each and every day that's so vital?
They are the frontline contact between the youthful offender, and some work on the DNN side or with our what we call civil areas. And I want to talk about that in a minute when we get to the second question. But nonetheless, they are the ones that keep in contact with the youth. They're the ones that do the monitoring over the weekends. And heretofore, we've had a situation where there were triage. The counselors, 3 of them may work with one family or one youth. We're going to a format now where there's one counselor for each child. That counselor is then responsible for all of the monitoring, the contact, the follow-up with the school system to make sure the child is not truant. All of those things, it places the responsibility on one person. So if there's a breakdown in that continued communication, that intensive communication, then that counselor is responsible for it. And you don't have, well, that wasn't my responsibility. I didn't have that child that particular weekend where they weren't monitoring the ankle bracelet. No, we want to make sure that all of our counselors are counted. But we have to be able to pay in a range that is commensurate with the skill level they're required to have.
Absolutely. Ms. Webb, I have a question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot here, only because I know your background and how long you've worked with MPD, dating back. I'm just going to say it, back into the 80s, right, and on through, you have gotten one of the most diverse, a very diverse background in dealing with community policing, to organized crime, to more serious. Over the years, is this the worst that you've ever seen it? Or what would you saying that you're seeing that goes, this is different? Or is this more of the same that we're seeing, that we're just putting more attention on it?
I'm going to say crime is like everything else. It evolves and it's progressive. So back in the 80s, it was different. We had crime, yes. And we had diverse levels of crime, but we also had different interactions when it came to police and the public. And our interactions in the 80s were more community-oriented, hands-on. We were able to walk the streets. We were able to talk to the neighbors and build relationships. As crime has progressed, in my opinion, the police are just answering, they're only able to answer calls because there's so many other things happening, not criminal in nature, but just people that need help, people that need assistance. Someone's car is out of gas or their tire is flat. I'm looking for the police to help me. So if the police officer is helping me with just an issue that is related to nothing involving a crime, that's taking them away from being able to walk the street, get to know the neighbors, build that relationship between the parents and the children and getting to know those children. So I would say crime has definitely progressed. It's bad. I can't say that it's worse than I've seen, but I will agree that we're paying more attention to it.
Okay. When I started this off, we talked about the Crime Commission, 500 juveniles will be charged with serious violent crimes. Also wanted to point out the vast majority of people arrested in Memphis, 86% are black. Black people do not make up 86% of the population. What's the breakdown? Why the disparity? What's happening there?
So I'll take a stab at that, Kelly. I think that, when you really look at where social problems lie in our communities, by far it's the minority communities, unfortunately. And our minority communities are where a lot of other problems are sort of bred. And we've talked a little bit about ACEs and probably can contribute, all kinds of experiences that our young people are exposed to how they end up, unfortunately, on the wrong side of the track. Some of our kids are brought up in broken families. Some of our young people are exposed to substance abuse, domestic violence, community violence in different ways. And those adverse childhood experiences help to, breed an environment that doesn't give our kids an opportunity to do something else. Economics and money is what exposes, young people to other things. And when you don't have those resources, sometimes our families, unfortunately, find themselves in desperate kind of situations, whether it's an adult that's involved in some type of criminal activity and there are young people in the family that end up going that way too. It's unfortunate, but there have been many studies, not just, on cities like Memphis, but around the country, that poverty and lack of resources and opportunity and access contribute to criminal behavior too.
Lack of access.
Lack of access.
We're going to get into that a little bit more as we continue with the conversation. You guys can feel free to jump in if you have something that you wanted to add. I want to talk a little bit about mental health. We had a situation at Fox 13, I'm sure you guys have covered, and many of you know at home what happened. We had someone who it is believed to have had a mental break and has a mental history that attempted to fire a weapon inside of a television station. Luckily, did not get in and did not hurt anybody else. But mental health and what we are seeing in our community, either one on the panel can tackle what we think mental health and the role it is playing in youth crime and what can be done about it. Because usually when we hear about mental health, it's when something is happening, right? Not in the before.
Yep. In fact, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. The impact of mental health, is particularly, again, on the African American community, is profound. And it is often overlooked and underreported. We as a community have to step into a new century. Often we are taught that what happens in the family stays in the family. We don't share the mental health issues that our families have had as a legacy, really, an inherited legacy, and deal proactively with it. Our community is often under-resourced. Often we find that parents are unaware of resources available even through the school system to have access to insurance that would cover mental health issues. We're working with a group called SEEDCO that works with fathers who have child support issues. They don't have to be justice involved, but if they're on our dockets handling child support matters, they get behind. SEEDCO will give them parental counseling, also help them get insurance. They go through a training program. They learn financial management, and they're working in partnership with Families Matter, which handles the mothers of these families. So we have to, again, address the under-resource that is going on in our community, especially in health insurance, and especially in being aware and being proactive in making sure our children get regular checkups, immunizations, and that they have access to counseling when they need it. For instance, bullying in school. That is often not reported because the youth is afraid to. And those are things that, again, lead to a child becoming demoralized, having social issues. Often, I was looking at a program about 2 weeks ago, and they were saying that since the pandemic, there have been higher incidences of children, youth having to be institutionalized or going through significant counseling to deal with issues of trying to commit suicide. So it is a significant problem in our community.
Yes.
I would just like to add that I think when we talk about mental health, we always add disorder to the end of it, regardless to if we say it out loud or if we think it. And because we consider mental health issues a disorder, we want to overlook it because we don't want to say our family member has a certain disease or a certain disorder. We find a way to attribute whatever that mental health issue may be, and it could be a child stressing over a math exam. That's a mental health concern. It could be going to school without having a backpack to carry books. That's a mental health concern for that particular child. Not having the up-to-date clothes. That was a huge mental health issue for me when I was a kid because we were poor. So I didn't dress like the other kids. I dressed in what my mother could afford. And most times she made my clothes. So I was often embarrassed to go to school. And I think children are experiencing that now. So we have to start with removing the stigma that is associated with those words, mental health, and remove that word out of our minds and our thoughts and our speech disorder. Because if we do that, it will enable us to recognize that this is a problem that we can address. We can speak the problem and address it in a manner that the person experiencing it is okay with receiving help.
Excellent point. Excellent point. And I'm curious to know about, Chief Davis, how MPD instructs and how you deal with juveniles who may be having an episode, because quite often I'm sure you have to come in contact, but you have to deal with it very in a sensitive way. How does MPD handle mental health situations?
So the perfect segue, because I was actually going to make a comment about the fact that we have seen an increase in the number of incidents that involved young people or adults that were going through a mental sort of crisis as we've been responding to different calls. Yesterday before council, we put out some stats. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I know for a fact that over 7,000 calls last year, 7,000 incidents were classified as that person was going through a mental crisis. Whether there was a crime committed or not, that was an element of that particular incident. And there were over 2,000 where we were called to a scene where a person was actually in the commission of committing suicide. So the police are being called more and more to these types of situations. So even though we have a very robust crisis intervention training program, and Memphis has boasted for years that the crisis intervention training program was birthed here in the city of Memphis. It is now a program all over the country for law enforcement. But what we found is, even though we have teams of individuals that are trained in crisis intervention, now we're seeing so many incidents, we find it necessary that all of our officers be trained in crisis intervention so that when they respond to a call, we don't have to wait for another officer from, some other side of town to get there, because many times those situations are very urgent and they need someone who can mitigate and help negotiate that situation. So we are taking our officers through what is considered an advanced crisis intervention training program as they get ready to graduate from the academy. That's the last part of their training.
That's the last part.
Yes.
To take with them as they hit the streets.
Take with them as they go out on the street.
Okay. And just a reminder here as we continue with this conversation, if you have any questions, feel free to write them down. We'll be taking questions from the audience, and we can write them down, and we can get it here to our panelists.
If I can add something to that,
Yes.
just briefly. Frederick Douglass said it's easier to build strong children than to fix broken men. And that is no more important a word to have. We have to commit the resources to this. And in regards to this conference, I want to say this to the Divine Nine, because one of the questions asked is, what can we do as a unit? We have and need volunteers for our foster care review board. These are boards that review the foster care plan, the parenting plans also. And if you could contact Jasmine Newsom at Juvenile Court, 901-222-0744, Jasmine Newsom, and it's jasmine.newsom at shelbycountytn.gov. Volunteering for our, not only the foster care board, but our counselors. We have volunteer counselors that come and will work with children. So if you want to volunteer, we need volunteers for counselors as well as on our foster care review board.
Excellent segue. Let's continue down. Ms. Webb, what are your thoughts on what can the D9 do to get involved with these issues? Not just mental health, but all issues dealing with our juveniles.
So I'm going to piggyback off Judge Sugarman with the volunteerism. We have in Memphis Alumni Chapter, I'm the president, 6 programs that are designed specifically for our youth, male and female, from ages 2 and up to 18. But oftentimes our chapter members are trying to operate all of these programs alone. We need community assistance. We need volunteers that's willing to. We had a golf clinic last month where we took a group of young ladies to play golf because we believe in providing positive experiences that include exposure to things that they wouldn't normally be exposed to. And we had a handful of chapter members there. We could have used a lot of assistance, male and female. We have a male youth program, and we lean very heavily on our fraternal brothers of the Divine Nine because most of our youth, our young males, see their mothers or their grandmothers all the time. So we lean heavily on our fraternal brothers to assist us when we're dealing with the young men. So I definitely would say volunteers to help us get the work done. We are a community, and if we are a village, we should be all in the village, not just us. So I'm saying other members of Divine Nine, we need you. Step up, as the chief said.
Step up. Chief Davis, I'll give you the word on that. Within MPD, what work can be done from the Divine Nine? Because this is a solution-based panel.
It is. It is sort of ironic that we're having this conversation. I remember having an interview when I first arrived in Memphis a year and a half ago, and we talked about community engagement and what it was going to take in order for us to impact change in the community. And part of that discussion was that the police department can't do it alone, and that there's so many entities out there that are doing the work, but everybody's doing their thing in silos. And if we really all just come together and just focus on what are the real priorities in our community, it's not that we're not doing good work, but it's a force multiplier when you think of the Divine Nine, the thousands of caring social activists, community activists that are out there. If we just galvanize and really think about what kind of impact that we could have together, whether it's having seminars for our young people, mentoring sessions for our young people. Soror Webb really hit on some things. Our kids need exposure. And when you expose them to something different, it creates a thirst. It creates a desire for them to want more. And if we continue to allow them to be thirsty for negative things that they're exposed to, then that's the track that they're going to go on. Children will be what they see. Of course, we have some anomalies where we have kids that make it out of bad situations, but a lot of our children are stuck. And if we really do want to give something back, it doesn't take a monumental effort from one person. It just takes a very small effort from thousands of us to make a difference in our community. So I think as we have this conversation, I think this will be an ongoing conversation of how we bring like-minded people, whether it's Divine Nine, whether it's churches, whether it's other civic organizations, to partner on what our young people need or what our community needs.
Certainly. We talk a lot about what we are expecting from community organizations We want to have a critical and honest conversation about trust from the community back to the police. We have had a number of big cases here in Memphis, across the country, from Tyree Nichols to George Floyd. What do you think needs to be done to reestablish trust in the community, particularly among young people? And you're out every day. Judge Sugarman, Chief Davis, I know how much Laura Webb works. And what do you think is missing in bringing that connection with I can trust law enforcement and police officers and the criminal justice system? And I can take that from whoever wants to take it. Not all at once, kids. That's not.
Well, I'll just take a quick stab at what I think is really important is that we meet our community members where they are. And that when we realize that there is a barrier or there is a divide between us and the community, we work for the community. And it's like any other business, you have to know who your customers are. Our customers are our community. And we should do everything in our power to understand the community, no matter what neighborhood it is, whether it's Hispanic neighborhood, Jewish neighborhood, African American. We need to be able to understand our community members, hear our community members and what they want from a police department as well. And in order to do that, sometimes it means we have to come out of uniforms. Sometimes it means that, I wanted to put on my Divine 9 tonight. But my staff told me, you need to be the police chief tonight. But we are people too, and we have officers that spend time with their volunteer time with young people and all of the things that we're talking about. But those opportunities aren't exposed as much. We have to do better letting the community know that we are approachable and that the police department don't want to get to know you just because it's some catastrophic incident that has occurred, that we are willing to give back to the community in a myriad of ways as well.
I'm going to take that from a Divine 9 standpoint and say that we need to assist relationship building between the community and the police department. We need to assist with bridging the gap of communication or mistrust. And some of the things that my chapter does, we have a program called Empowering Males to Build Opportunities for Developing Independence, our Embody program. And when we had our mini conference last month, we invited the Memphis Police Department to come in and teach a session. The young men that registered for the conference were very, very interested because we made that particular session with the police interesting. That session was called The Feds Are Watching. So everybody wanted to know, how are the feds watching me? And the police department sent 4 representatives to come and spend time with these young men in a positive environment, in an informative environment that really allowed our young men that attended that day to see the police as people, to see them as human, to see them as that person years ago that your mother would say, if you ever get lost, go look for that person right there. And at the end of the day, when we went to lunch, the young men that were in the session mingled in with the police. They didn't sit to the side. It was no us against them because they were able to communicate and to talk and to chat and to just enjoy the company. So I think as Divine 9 members, we need to create more opportunities that will allow the children that we're serving and the parents that we're serving to interact with the police in a positive light.
Okay.
It is a law enforcement question, and I try to stay in my lane and stay out of law enforcement's lane, but the court is an intervention, and in that regard, there was some comments earlier about getting back into community policing. We have to do that. In 2006, I wrote a letter to then Director Godwin. I was on the finance board with the Memphis Chickasaw chapter here in Shelby County. And in that time, they had an opportunity where officers could volunteer as scout leaders and assistant scout leaders. When he took it out, it was because of budget concerns. I wrote him a letter and said, you are making a big mistake. These children look up to these officers in these scouting troops. These officers don't just advise them in terms of scouting. They go to church with them. They take them to church. They would show up at graduations, come in at lunchtime and spend time with these kids. Officers used to could buy a home in the community and get a discount on their mortgage. We have to get back into programs like that. And I said, the same children that are looking up to your officers now, in a few years, you take scouting out of the Boy Scouts, the police out of the Boy Scouts, they're going to be the same kids shooting back at you. I hate that was more of an indication of what was to come, but it's bearing out. Now, I was speaking to the pastor's wife, Ms. Davis, who works with scouting, and I would like to recognize Chris and Rhonda. I appreciate you all having this opportunity for us to speak to the community. But she works with Boy Scouts, and they are looking at inner city troops where kids really need to have these opportunities. In terms of resources at juvenile court, we need to focus more. There's so much attention being paid to our delinquency dockets. But the dependency and neglect dockets, that's 70% of the business that comes to juvenile court, and that's where we're under-resourced. These are families that have children who are either neglected or in conditions where they're under-resourced. So we can work with kids 10 months up to 13 or 14-year-olds. We show a trend. If a child comes up on the dependency and neglect docket and the families are not sufficiently resourced, those children, about 60 to 7%, will actually be on our delinquency docket in a couple of years. If we put the resources there and are intentional about giving the families these resources and opportunities to have exposure, to have programs where they learn how to keep a bank account, how to put together a budget. It's one thing to get a child support check, is another thing to know how to manage it. If we put the time and the energy, it will pay dividends to us down in the future.
Yeah. I say this because I sometimes feel concerned that a lot of children, the first time they have a contact or an impression of a police officer is when something bad is happening to them or somebody that they love, right? And how do you combat that considering the high level of crime that's happening? Before the Divine Nine can get in there and create that beautiful relationship, you've already arrested my cousin, and I didn't like what you did. Or how do we get past that and creating that relationship, considering the number of people who are moving through our criminal justice system, and our children are watching?
Absolutely. I'll take a stab at that as well. One of the programs that we do have that is, a very effective program is our Dare Great program. And that program is really situated so that young people at the age of 3rd and 4th graders, some 5th graders, they have an opportunity to go through a 9-week program with our officers about staying away from guns, staying away from drugs. And as they graduate, last week we graduated about 500. As they graduate, it's amazing the love that they have for the officers that they've spent those weeks with. You can tell that the relationship and the idea of policing is different than what they see on TV, and they are compelled and really have bought into, their slogan of, I will not do drugs and I will not, be exposed to guns. That's not who I am. And when they repeat all of these, various training adages, you can tell that impact is going to stay with them for a long time. But we as a police department can't touch the thousands, so it will take the Divine Nine and other groups to help us bridge that gap, bring young people in. A city of 650,000 people, there is so much opportunity for all of us to work together to change that. We have Boy Scout troops in the Memphis Police Department, and we just recently started 9 Girl Scout troops at all 9 precincts. We have 45 young women, police officers, who are volunteering their time. They don't get paid to do this. And we have officers that have football teams. One officer has football teams of over 150 youth. And we have other ones that do that too. But we aren't but one source. We need opportunities to talk to our community members, and everyone says, what can we do to help? I think we all need to come together and really start prioritizing how we can work better together to make change.
500 youth, that is impressive. Thank you, thank you. We got a lot of great questions in. I have one for Judge Sugarman. The question is, who is doing it right and what can be done? Okay, who is doing it right and what are they doing that can be replicated by members of D9? What are you seeing that's good?
I have to look at the model of Davidson County. Judge Sheila Calloway was elected in 2014, and since then, the recidivism rate has dropped down to under 40% in most of the offenses that come into that court. They also have introduced restorative justice, which is handled through RAFA Institute, which is based in Nashville. We're in the process of negotiating an MOU with RAFA to introduce the restorative justice program here in Shelby County. We also have to have community-based alternatives to detention. The trends show that child is detained, even for a short period of time. It affects that youth in the negative way, so they see a trend where they're actually going to go into the system. Again, in Nashville, of the youth that were arrested and detained, 70% of them repeat offended, recidivists. If they were not detained, they showed that less than 6% repeated, and of that number, 8% of that 6% were committed some violence, reoffended. So that is one thing that we can look at, a model that has actually worked. They're building a campus in Davidson County for their juvenile system. It will have mental health treatment there. It'll have housing there, transitional housing for youth that are not able to go back in the community but still need to be in some other alternative than essentially a baby jail, a youth jail, and a new court system. So we need to have those kind of community-based alternatives here.
I want to direct this question to Sora Webbs and Chief Davis. I think this is a great question. I'm not quite sure who asked this, but how do we reach the kids who are not considered to have promise? The last and the left out. Not the president of the Honor Society, right? Not the head of the Glee Club or whatever, but you know the one that is already maybe showing some problems, maybe unaddressed. How do we reach the kids who are not considered to have the promise or that part? And that to me, because quite often I feel like there are a lot of kids who get lost until it's too late and all of a sudden they're seeing you, Judge Sugarman, or they're seeing you, or... So what can be done? What's the answer to that?
Well, from my perspective, that is absolutely who we want to focus on. Because those are the individuals that, for whatever reason, fell off, off the track and, have a sense of hopelessness. And I can't remember who said it. I was at an event recently. Matter of fact, I see my Sorrel Robertson out in the audience, and I think you remember the woman talked about the fact that we have to stop being talking about dope dealers, but we all need to be hope dealers. And to me that was profound, because in our community, our young people need hope. They need to feel like they are able to get out of that situation that they're in. And sometimes, quite frankly, they don't have the resources or family members or the connections to help them get out of that. And there are so many resources that Judge Sugarman and, of course, Sora Webb knows about here in the city, that we are all trying to ensure that they're at the table when we bring some of these individuals in that are justice involved, the ones that continue to find themselves in stolen vehicles or with weapons and things of that nature. Instead of saying arrest and incarceration is the only thing for you, here are some resources. We're going to help expunge your record. We're going to help you get your driver's license. We're going to help you get a job. And those are the kind of services that we need to be about doing to shift this change.
I'm going to add to that. We all agree that we do not want to see our young people's futures crippled. But it's easy for us to manage that child. That's easy. So to me, I'm challenging the D9 to manage the child that isn't easy. Make that your challenge.
Right.
To not just notice that young person, but to actually engage them. Show them the same love we do that person that's on the high track. I think that for our chapter, when we're creating or we're trying to identify young people for our programs, a lot of times I'll call on the 901 Block Squad, and I'll ask them to help identify some kids or young women or young boys that could benefit from whatever the program is, so that we can start bringing them in and exposing them to some other things. And I think all of us need to tap into resources like that.
Right.
We a lot of times depend on a school counselor to identify a student, or we depend on the educators in our chapters to identify children. But we have to also tap into the community activists that's dealing with our children and get them to assist us in identifying who we can help.
That's a great point. That's an excellent point. 901 Block Squad, for those who don't know, is like an intervention group. They're quite often on the front lines when crimes happen and trying to prevent things from popping off. And so they will jump in. And so reaching out to organizations like that who are often trying to talk and squash beef and things like that, it's a great way to engage those who really need engagement. Because I can't wait to ask the next panel what they think about that. And so you had something you wanted to add, or no?
Well, 901 Block Squad also works with us through our ceasefire program. But one of the things that we need to be mindful of as a community is not taking the throw the baby out with the bathwater concept, the one bad apple spoiling the whole bunch. At juvenile court, we have to use some discernment. There's a lot of course, pressure because of the risk in public safety. But we have to also be mindful that these are children. If we can't turn a child around, and we're talking about 9, 12-year-olds up to 17-year-olds, then there's something wrong with us and with our view. And I participated, or I was a judge in this contest recently called Do the Right Thing. It initially started here when Harold Collins had gone to D.C. and they heard about this program. It's now, I think, in its 16th year, but these children in school, youth in school, are writing essays in middle school. And there's one young man who actually won in the division he was in, but he wrote an essay, and one of the things he was concerned about was that everybody was looking at him as if he was the problem. Because he's in that demographic, that age group, in that race, where often they think that that is the threat to our community.
Wow.
Well, children committing these delinquent acts is a small percentage of that number. I want, and we need to have youth mentors, peer mentors. These could be young people in high school, in college. I've talked to a young man that is actually with the Hollis Price School, and he's going to be going to Lemoyne. He's the president of his class. He wants to come into juvenile court with some of his peers. These are the examples that can identify those diamonds in the rough in our community and help these kids get in contact with the resources, help them grow and blossom. And again, it's exposure. If these children have exposure, you will see their opportunities. You'll see their value. You'll see where their strengths and weaknesses are, and help direct them to their strengths. Find out what they're interested in and focus on that and get them to go along that path. And we'll turn a lot of these citizens around, a lot of these kids around.
Exciting. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here today. That's going to wrap up panel number 1 as we talked about juveniles and crime. So for the D9 that is out here in the audience and listening in, I heard a gazillion ideas that you need to be taken back to your respective organizations of how you can get involved and what they really need to see. And thank you for being so honest and open. And I can't wait to speak to the next panel. We're going to figure out what's happening with our educators and access. That's coming up next. We're going to take a quick break, stretch your legs. We'll be right back momentarily.
There's a new era in policing. Leading the way is the Memphis Police Department. Be part of the change and join MPD for a career in law enforcement. Protect and serve the people of our city. Protect the peace. Help us make a better and stronger Memphis. Live a life of meaning. Be the change. Join the best in blue. Come to the Memphis Police Department Hiring Expo on April 8th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 170 North Main in downtown Memphis.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
Success in life is not a straight line. There are twists and turns in everyone's life, and the more you know about their story, the more you'll understand the process. Kazukian Media Group proudly presents The Journey, a show that features successful black men in Memphis telling their stories of their lives and the ups and downs they've encountered on their ultimate road to success. We believe The Journey will encourage young men and help them see that life is a journey. Watch The Journey, hosted by me, Larry Robinson. Brought to you by the Kazukian Media Group in partnership with the Delta Boulé.
There's a new era in policing. Leading the way is the Memphis Police Department. Be part of the change and join MPD for a career in law enforcement. Protect and serve the people of our city. Protect the peace. Help us make a better and stronger Memphis. Live a life of meaning. Join the best in blue.
My name is Lieutenant Tina Halfacre.
I'm Officer Andrades. My rank is P2P.
Officer Christopher Freeman.
I am Officer Meeks. I am a P2.
My name is Sergeant Lee.
Officer Baruga. I'm a patrol officer.
I am Officer Shauna Roden, and I've been a Memphis police officer for 3 years.
36 years.
8 months.
I've been with the Memphis Police Department for 8 years.
12 years.
The people that I come in contact with, I see them either at Walmart, if I go to a gas station and get a snack, whatever it may be, I run into the same people and they remember me. And that's I don't know, it's a comfort for me that someone remembers me and that I've had some type of positive impact on someone.
My favorite part is being a police officer is being in the motorcycles unit. I am the first and only female. I love riding motorcycles, and that way you get to meet a lot of people.
Memphis is where I'm from, and I love my city. So why wouldn't I serve my city?
안녕하세요. 저 이름은 Sergeant Lee입니다. Join the best in blue.
Join the best in blue. If I can do it, tú también lo puedes hacer.
Join the best in blue so you can ride along with me.
It doesn't matter where you're from. Memphis Police Department is going to give you the opportunity to be here, to get more than a job. They give you opportunity to get a career.
For anybody that wants to apply and have a heart for service, go ahead and make the decision. Don't hesitate on it. It'll be the best decision you've ever made, and come join the best of you.
Be the change. Join the best in blue. Come to the Memphis Police Department Hiring Expo on April 8th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 170 North Main in downtown Memphis.
out all your Kentuckian favorites now.
There we go. Thank you so much. Everybody taking their seats. We've got much more to unpack. This time we're going from crime and juveniles to education and access. So this is all about our young people, so we need to start at the beginning. Back to school, folks. We may not solve all the city's problems today, but our hope is that this is a very good starting point, and we're starting with a very good panel here who are all involved in our education system and our young folks, and it's my pleasure to welcome them back. Of course, we know Chief Davis, she is back with us, along with Terrence Patterson, CEO of Memphis Education Fund and a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. lot of love there. A lot of love, Terrence. Archie Moss, founder of the Gentlemen's League and school design partner at Transcend, member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Eve Slaughter, principal, Cornerstone Prep and Leicester, president, ESPN Academy, member of Sigma Gamma Rho sorority. She ready for a picture. You can go on. And Mario Cole, Dean of Students and Families, Memphis Rise Academy, member of Iota Phi Theta fraternity. Okay, we want to start off with a topic that's gotten a lot of conversation in the news, and I'm sure in communities, and I'm sure in your respective schools and professions. Let's talk about truancy, okay? Truancy is a legal term that refers only to unexcused absences, and this number is really disheartening that I'm about to give. According to the Memphis-Shelby County School District, 40,000 MSCS students faced truancy during the 2021-2022 school year. That is very strange because that is about half of the student body within MSCS. What can be done to keep kids in our school? And so we're going to start one with the legal of what MPD can do. So Chief Davis, I want to start with you, and then we're going to move down the line here. But what can MPD or what can be done about students just not showing up and the parents are not requiring them to be in the schools?
So, you know, the state of Tennessee has compulsory school age laws. However, you know, as a police department, truancy really isn't a focus of the police department, mainly because of the fact that we don't really have the type of resources to really address truancy. However, we do work very closely with our school systems to try to visit homes where a school counselor or a school representative might feel like they need some assistance when they go visit a home. If they feel like, you know, there may be some conflict, we engage in that way. But we see children from time to time, you know, during school hours, and we know that they're out. But, you know, I've said it more than once that the back seat of a patrol car is not the place for a child. It just isn't. And we have to come up with some different ways in order to address truancy, and we are certainly willing to work with the school system in that regard. And and we mentioned it on the other panel. The last place you want a child to have a lasting memory of police is that they had to be put in the back seat of a patrol car, and that's something they'll never, you know, forget. So I'm interested to hear what the educators here on the stage have to say about it, and I can sort of take a back seat on this conversation a little bit more.
I'm interested in too as well, Chief Davis. I could tell you, someone who's a reporter that goes out and about in the streets, I have asked myself that a couple times. I go, what time is it? Why am I seeing this child in the streets? So for our educators, what can be done to keep kids in school? And more specifically, are you seeing anything in your schools that has been considered effective? And so, Ms. Slaughter, you can take this, Mr. Cole, anybody on the panel, really.
I'll start with just contacting parents, engaging with families, knowing who your students are, knowing what their issues are, what the barriers to them coming to school are, and then as a school team working to address those barriers. Is it transportation? If they're not on the bus route, let's get them a MATA bus card. We'll provide that for them so that they can come to school. If it's access to clean clothes, we have a washer and dryer at school. Our community partners offer washer and dryer services for free. If it's, I can't afford a uniform, we have grants and things that can help us make sure that we can give students the things that they need so that they can come to school and be successful. but it takes all of us working together in the school to know who those students are, and then making that contact with families, building relationships with families. Once they know that they can trust you, they're going to tell you all of their business. Oh, we got put out. Oh, our clothes got stolen out of the washing machine. Oh, this happened to my car. Once we get to the bottom of that, then we can help them.
Okay. Are you guys finding a lot of times in your schools that it's those basic issues, not just I don't want to come to school, but is it really just, not just, I don't want to minimize it, but I don't have clean clothes, I don't have food, I'm embarrassed to come to school. Is that the actual barrier? I'm trying to think for D9 members who are asking, how can I play a part?
I think that's half of the barrier. I think the other half of the barrier is when you think about excess and just the cycle of poverty, right? My husband and I have to get up every morning and go to work. So that means our children need somewhere to go. They're going to school because that's where they're supposed to be. But if I don't have access, if I don't have anything to get up and go to, I'm not going to wake up. Our school starts at 7:15. I'm not going to wake up at 6:30, 7 o'clock intentionally to get anybody anywhere if I don't have to be somewhere myself. And so then that takes us as a community working together to figure out how we can help the parents. We're having lots of conversations about children. That's great. But children are children. They don't take care of themselves. They don't get up and bring themselves to school. They don't cook their breakfast. They don't wash their clothes. They don't comb their hair. They have people responsible for them to make sure those things happen. So how do we reach back and help parents? How do we get them job training? How do we get them access to the programs that offer job training all across the city? And how do we get those resources to them?
I will add, I'm going to take it in a different direction. I think the biggest thing that we need to do is figure out and unpack, and as I like to call, graciously interrogate why students don't want to come to school. That's not a conversation we're having. Why are we not talking and communicating with the students and asking them why? And oftentimes, I like to call myself a retired principal because I'm not going back. But I say that because of the work that you have to do on top of being a principal to make sure you're making your school an engaging environment. We have to unpack and interrogate the curriculum in which students are actually being instructed on. Do students actually see themselves in what they're learning each and every day? I go back and I think back to my time as a child growing up in Miami-Dade County and thinking about school was once fun. It was once a place of joy. It was once a place of happiness where there was a thirst for learning. And honestly, I'm no longer a principal because I feel as though schools and the way the system has been trying to get us to mandate these state-mandated tests. They got to do this. We can't do anything to actually pour into children holistically. Yes, there's academic achievement that has to be met, but what are we doing to pour into our students socially and emotionally? What are we doing to make them better people, better citizens for the city of Memphis? Those are things that are stripped away from what is expected of us. And those are things that when principals like myself try to do those things, try to carve out time for advisory, try to carve out time to do community meetings to recognize and represent our students in a positive way, where now I'm getting in trouble because I'm taken away from the instruction. But what we need to understand is that our kids are never going to master that math lesson if we haven't unpacked what's going on, the trauma and the generational poverty that they're experiencing each and every day before they even came to school. So I think there needs to be a conversation or a shift in the relevance of what we're actually presenting our students each and every day and unpacking why they don't want to come to school. And I guarantee when we make school fun, we make it engaging where students forget that they're learning. They forget that they're actually in a place and they have to go here. I feel like now we need to make sure we get back to the basics of understanding that we need to make an enjoyable experiences for not only our students, but for our teachers and our parents. And last thing I'll just even say on that is even unpacking why our parents also choose not to show up to schools. We have to also unpack what their experience was in school. If parents did not have a positive experience with K through 12 education system, it's going to have a ripple effect on how our students are received or how they prioritize the importance of education in general. So I think we have to think of it in numerous different ways. And as Eve mentioned, like, what are those resources that our parents need? What are the resources that our parents need so we can give them the access and opportunity so that our students do feel as though their school is an area and environment where we can give them what they need to show up each and every day.
I'm just going to throw this in here because that was an excellent point. I 100% agree with you. But something that I hear whenever I'm interviewing people about how do we reach young people, how to reach children, it always goes back to the parents. And there's a lot of people who are not wanting to show a lot of grace to parents. They're like, this is your responsibility. You've got a child. You need to get them to school, right? But how do we do it in a way with working parents who might be working crazy hours and trying to get up and be there for their children? How do we give working parents grace and support to actually make this happen and be invested in their children? You talked about how you interact. You're on the phone. You're calling. Is that what it is? Are we not interacting enough with parents, or is it time to get tough and be like, this is your responsibility and this is an expectation for you? And what would that look like? Ooh, I know that was difficult. But I do know that's how people feel, right? In terms of parents who are ultimately responsible, because then it turns onto the principal, onto the teacher. They show up for the police chief who is coming up. And how do we engage parents to want to be involved? Any ideas?
Go ahead, brother.
My job specifically is to communicate with students and their families. Every day, that's what I'm doing. I'm dealing with behavior, culture, every day. And I think a lot of times it goes back to what you were saying about just having, in the panel earlier, what they was talking about access. A lot of parents themselves don't have access. So in turn, if they don't have access, it's going to affect the children, the students, to have access or exposure to different things. I believe that everyone in here, everyone that's listening to us, we have hands. And if our hands don't and cannot find things to do, it'll find other things to do that may not be productive. And I believe we should have the opportunities, or give the opportunities to our young people to allow them to use their hands to work. A lot of times when people focus on our schools focus on post-secondary education, go to college, and I believe that as a sixth grader, if somebody would have put a hammer in my hand, I probably would have had my own construction company today, and just giving them those type of opportunities, exposure. And, we may not want to hear this, what I'm about to say. This may be controversial. But let's pay teachers a little bit more, and let's shorten the days, honestly. I think all those things are impacted because you got to think about, we have a lot of young teachers where I work. They're going through TFA and the programs and things like that. A lot of these teachers are coming in also with stress, social, emotional, not calling off. I'm sure you understand that fact more than anybody. And I believe that not just the students, not just the parents, teachers, administrators, everybody's being affected, especially coming through this pandemic. And I believe, kids, people going through the pandemic, and we were going through virtual school and all those things, it really affected a lot of young people in so many different ways. But I believe just giving opportunity to allow people to use their hands I think, would be more effective than what we're doing.
Thank you very much for that. I want to go and touch back a little bit on our previous panel. We were talking about crime and juveniles. MPD was giving me some numbers before I came up here. Over 5,800 cars stolen. Yeah. Over 5,800 cars stolen. The average age 16. So school-age children who are involved in these crimes. But a lot of these crimes committed are actually genius level, right? For instance, kids are cracking the code to steal Teslas. That's a valuable skill and a future possibly in IT. You talked about using your hands. How can we, in the education system, as stakeholders, as investors into our children and school systems, how can we funnel those skills and energy, right, into not stealing my car and being creative in truly rehabilitative programs? Is there anything you're seeing in your schools or your system that's like, man, this is working? And talk to me about how do we get them to just refocus that train of thought?
Just one thing that we're seeing, and maybe this is a big picture approach, and the previous panel talked about this, and Archie, you alluded to it, but we've got to think bigger in the context of innovation in our schools. This brother mentioned shorter school days. I was going to add that we also need to think about changing the calendar. If you think about the school calendar, it was based on an agrarian system, and you get 2 or 3 months out, and you know that could put a strain on parents that are working year-round. So what does a year-round calendar look like to create an innovation that is accommodating or more accommodating to parents? But specifically to your question in terms of how do we harness some of the intellect and really brilliance of our students, we also have to have more conversations, and I see Beverly Robertson in the crowd. We have to have more conversations with our business community to make sure that the things that we are teaching our students are matching the needs of our businesses and our communities. Because I think, one, it will make things more exciting and more real, but it will also provide greater access and connectivity to the things that they're doing. Because you're right, the kids are brilliant. We know they know how to do it, but we have to do a better job in our educational systems and in our schools to connect why they know what they're doing to what that end goal is, and not just make it about this sort of nebulous post-secondary or college experience.
And I'll just add, so my organization, the Gentlemen's League, is an all mentor program that actually serves 9 schools across Memphis, Shelby County. And ultimately we work with boys of color who are historically underserved and really being able to provide them with all those tools, resources, and access to lead them to paths of success. And so what we actually did a few weeks, the end of April, actually, we have our annual Blackout Weekend, which is our annual Boys of Color Conference. And it was an opportunity for us to partner with community organizations throughout the city of Memphis to provide our young men with access and opportunities. And so we brought individuals from all walks of life there to bring some of these ideas of college and careers to them at this age, starting at age in grades 3 all the way up to 12th graders. And so we brought in organizations like the Code Crew so that we can teach the young men about coding. You know, they're so big on video games, so we had a game truck there so they could play the games. And then after they left the game truck, they went into this coding session to learn actually how do you make games. So I think it's important for us to start bringing in those hands-on real-life experiences. We partner with UT Health Science Center where we brought med students there to teach them the fundamentals of what it's like to go to med school. Again, and I think, Mario, you alluded to it, our kids don't know what they don't experience. And so, again, if we don't ever expose them to different walks of life, we will never know what they're capable of or what they're good at. I always joke with my mom, I share a birthday with Tiger Woods, and I say, I could have been Tiger Woods, but you never put a golf club in my hand, and so I could have been real good. But again, we have to start at an early age, finding different ways, different skills. I'm thinking about the schools that I support with my full-time job, Transcend, where we work to be more innovative with schools across the nation, is all around how do we make learning relevant for them. And so bringing in the community, bridging that gap, but also bringing in more project-based learning. How can we look at the curriculum and connect it to different skills that we see? You know, here in the city of Memphis, we know we have food deserts, we have different things. There is learning that could happen that we can connect what's happening in the community right into our K-12 curriculum. So I think just finding more opportunities where we can bridge the gap and really bring in the community, bring in our Divine Line organizations who are all a part of different walks of life, all different careers. We can show up to schools to also be able to talk to students, to expose them to these careers. So I think it just really takes the entire community to be able to come together, really figure out what we can do to channel and repurpose these skills in a positive way.
I would like to add to that. or this conversation funding. When you think about the schools that expose their students to robotics, to STEM, to coding, to gaming, where are those schools? It's certainly not my school. Is it your school? Was it your school? Okay. It's not the schools that need it, right? And so when you think about how do we give our black and brown babies these opportunities, we need money. So how can the Divine Nine help? It's some Q's in the house, they make a lot of money. It's some Deltas in the house, they make a lot of money. It's some Kappas in the house, they make a lot of money. All these churches, the Iotas, the Alphas, the Deltas, the AKAs, we make a lot of money collectively. We can repurpose some of our dues, some of our fees, some of our assessment fees, and put some money into the schools because that's what we need. I would love to have Code Crew come for my third grade STEM class that are building cars right now. They're building cars. Come see my car. Miss Lada, I built a car. You gonna come see it? Yes, baby, I'm coming to see your car. I'm building a bridge with Legos. You coming to see it? They're excited. But we don't have enough resources and materials for the whole school to build bridges and cars and robots with Legos because our budget is tight. So we can repurpose our money and not just repurpose the money. Now, I'm just talking about what I'm talking about, y'all. We can't just support our friends' schools, right? So there are some schools that get a whole lot of support from a whole lot of different people because of the connection. We got to go to the other schools that don't have all of the connections and help those black and brown babies too because they deserve the exposure. They deserve the experiences. They deserve the opportunities.
Excellent point. Come on, Ms. Slaughter, absolutely. I was surprised by you talking about the things that have been just cut. I don't think I really had any idea how many of the extracurricular, the arts that have been cut. For someone who grew up, that played a huge role into who I am today. How many schools don't have theater programs, don't have some sports programs, just anything that can gain some interest. And I know, Mr. Cope, you had anything you wanted to add to that. But if you guys, I just want to remind that if you guys have any questions, feel free to write them down. Our question, Ms. Joy, so our Joy's going to be right there to grab any of your questions that you might have for this panel. And for the last panel, I neglected to say that we are going to answer those questions online, right? If you didn't hear your question answered when we ran out of time. It's a little warm, isn't it? We're talking about it. You're being very honest, and that's okay. And that is okay. I want to get down back to the D9 organizations.
And can
yes.
I just add something on this innovation point? One of the promises of charter schools, which we have in the state of Tennessee and we have in Memphis and Shelby County, is innovation. And I always hear leaders talk about the things that we could be teaching our children. We're supporting fellowships where we're looking for leaders. These leaders could come from the Divine Nine that want to start a new school concept that isn't just your traditional schoolhouse with a couple of nuances here and there, but maybe we need a charter school in Memphis that focuses on the musical arts. Why don't we have a specialty school that focuses on some type of entertainment or skill? And so I think we have the opportunity in our community for innovation and great ideas and put them in practice and get public funding resources in order to execute and attract and bring more students back to our school buildings and engage more community members. But I wanted to highlight that because we know that there's an opportunity for innovation, but we actually have a vehicle in the state of Tennessee for us to get public resources in order to do some of these innovations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to give the panelists a chance to do a little bragging on your organizations because here's the thing. We love our respective organizations, but maybe someone else is doing something pretty awesome that you're like, you know what? Maybe that's something we can partner with or do where we are right now. For example, Delta Sigma Theta does ACT prep, and it's something that we've been doing for years and years and years and getting high school students ready to take the ACT exams. So think long and hard. Tell us about some of the programs your respective organizations implement now specifically to reach kids. And here's the thing. Look, I know that it's being done. So give me one or two examples of, I love what we're doing here. I see how it is working and reaching to our young people. And anyone can jump in that wants to answer.
I can speak to, I am the Director of Educational Activities for the Sigma Orlando chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha, and I have the awesome opportunity of actually leading our Golden Seed Conclave, which is our mentoring program that we have established. We've actually established this. This is going into our second year. We actually work with youth grades 5 through 12 across the entire city of Memphis. And so we have monthly workshops with them where we are actually pouring into them. We've actually been smart about what we do, so we've actually put some of our national programs within our Golden Seed Conclave, and so we're addressing a voteless people as a hopeless people. So we're trying to make sure we're teaching our young men about what is the process like to actually register to vote, to understand how do you go ahead and exercise that right to vote, make sure you're voting for the right candidates. We actually had the opportunity of hosting where our actual young men actually hosted a political candidate forum. Judge Sugarman had the awesome opportunity of actually being on that, where our actual young men ran that entire event. They asked the questions, they were the MCs, they were everything, because again, it's important for us to give these young men those opportunities to be able to really engage with politicians so that they feel like their voices are being heard. But then we also are having moments where we're having conversations around Project Alpha and Go to High School, Go to College, where we took our young men to visit schools across the state of Tennessee during spring break. And so ultimately, the whole purpose of that is connecting our young men throughout the city of Memphis with mentors. And so all of our chapter members serve as mentors to make sure that we're guiding them throughout the course of their academic year, doing some goal setting, making sure that, again, we are checking on them. So we know that when our young men go to school, when they go home, they have their parents checking on them. We know when they go to school, they might have those teachers. But outside of those two areas, what can we do to fill in the gap to make sure within the community that we're also stepping in and support them? And so we have had the awesome opportunity to be able to partner with my nonprofit, the Gentlemen's League, to be able to lead some of these events and sessions so our young men are, again, getting that exposure and access to all walks of life. So, again, we're leading them to those paths of success.
The local chapters of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated offer mentorships beginning at age 8 for young women. So from age 8 up through high school age, we have Rosebuds for the littles, and we have the Rower Club for older students in middle school and high school. Through our mentorships, we also offer programs called Youth Symposium. It happens once a year where we expose students to different sessions ranging from a variety of topics on financial literacy, coding, buying property, swim clinics. We also offer Swim 1922 as a national project, but we're very passionate here in the greater Memphis Mid-South area about that project too, where we teach children and their families about swim safety. We talk a lot about accidental drownings, children around pools because they don't know how to swim. Their families don't know how to swim, and they don't know what to do when they get in the water. And so we spend a lot of time talking about water safety, teaching basic swim techniques in a swim clinic to support them. Amongst all of those other things, we also offer scholarships, just like all of the other organizations present in the room. As a member of the National Sorority of Phi Delta Kappa, it's an educational sorority. I'm a member of the local chapter here as well. We also offer mentorships and programs and scholarships geared towards men and women in high school, helping them to go to Lemoyne-Owen College and work to become educators. So we're building a pipeline for students to get exposure to the field of education so that we can grow our own educators in the city.
I did a poll about black people, that how did they learn how to swim? And a lot of people said they got thrown in, and that's a traumatic way to learn how to swim. And this program is amazing. I want to let you know that. My organization, Alpha Phi Theta, we Locally, we have 2 drives that we do. A Thanksgiving drive where we bless a family with a whole meal on Thanksgiving. And then we do a back-to-school drive where we, for low-income families, where we give out backpacks, food. We do manicures for our young people and their families, and things like that. And on a national level, we have different programs, one being the IOTA Youth Alliance, and it's under that umbrella, a lot of things fall under that umbrella. Tutoring, ACT prep, all those things, food drives. Then we also do something with, we do the St. Jude race every year. Me being a St. Jude's patient when I was younger, I didn't have cancer, but I had 3 brain surgeries. And so that's an initiative that we do that I try to volunteer every year, that we raise money for. So.
Excellent. We want to make sure that we have enough time for questions as well, and you can, as usual, you guys have there some really good ones. So the first one, it says Chief Davis, so I'm going to go right there to it. Is there any initiative to connect children in the juvenile system, Tarek, we may have to call you up, in the juvenile system with school programs, or can schools connect to them somehow? Is there a direct pipeline, I think?
You know, and there may be. I see one of my deputy chiefs, he knows that I'm still learning about the various programs and things that connect different systems together, and we certainly have a new judge over juvenile court who has been very innovative in his thinking about how the juvenile court system and the school system can work together along with law enforcement. The objective being, we need to show that there are other alternatives for our young people other than the criminal justice system. Chief Crow, is there any particular program that we have historically in the Memphis Police Department that connects our schools with juveniles? That's right.
Hold tight.
Okay, we're gonna put a microphone to that, and I do remember talking about the SHAPE program. Go ahead.
Don Crow, Memphis Police Department. So the SHAPE program is designed as a diversion program. It's a partnership with Memphis Shelby County Schools. So if a juvenile offender is involved in what we would consider a minor crime, a status offense, rather than involving that juvenile in the juvenile court system, is enrolled in a program through the Memphis Shelby County Schools. It's about an 8-week program that they have to agree to participate in.
Absolutely. Those are good programs, diversion programs for young people, especially if it's a first-time offense. Instead of ruining a child's record and having some scar, you send them through a program so that they can, really learn from their experience. They report. And the program that I had in my previous jurisdiction, which was a misdemeanor diversion program, we had a 99% success rate that those young people did not reoffend. And that was working with young people who do something wrong. And we say everybody deserves a second chance.
Sometimes the ones that do something wrong get the most attention. And sometimes we forget the ones who are not coming back, who did do right, and they don't get the attention. It's hard to sometimes, so it's good to put that out there, the ones who made a mistake and was able to correct that. This question is directed towards Archie Moss, Ms. Slaughter, Mr. Cole. Some years ago, I believe this says Baltimore School implemented a mediation or yoga to replace detention. Really? Because that was not the case. You're doing yoga instead of sitting down? Okay, all right, that's great. Which has been effective. How can our school system implement something like this? And I'm just curious to know, are any schools doing this? Are you still not sitting in desks and staring at the wall for 8 hours? That's changed? Not that I was ever in detention, but I'm just asking.
I will say that that was a lot of the work that I was doing as a principal at Bruce Elementary School. As students enter their school every single day, we start our day with our advisory period, which consisted of some mindfulness, which was some yoga. We had to have opportunities for our young people to remove everything they just experienced. I worked the car rental line, so I opened the doors and I saw my parents sometimes not sending their children off in the best way. And so we have to receive them in whatever way they showed up. And so that time to have that yoga, that time to be able to just come into terms with your body, your feelings, your emotions, was allowing the students to be able to unpack what they just experienced and figure out a plan of action on what we're going to do moving forward so we have a better day. But I think you have to be intentional around planning for those moments and taking time to actually do that. We have to view that as a priority. We can't view that as a waste of instructional time. I think I viewed that and those moments of making sure that we were talking to students, figuring out what they needed, as those opportunities of getting kids ready to learn. And I think as more and more schools, I do know there are other schools that are doing that across the city of Memphis, but I will be surprised to see that those schools' data is higher than other schools because, again, we are actually focusing on the holistic development of children, and I think those are necessary. We'll see that students are learning from those mistakes and not wanting to make them again because we're actually trying to teach them. So I just go back to this point. There's a quote that says, children doesn't know how to read, we teach them. When children doesn't know math, we teach them to do math. But when children doesn't know how to behave, we suspend them. And so if we don't actually teach them and give them the tools of how to de-escalate, tools of just learning how to communicate their needs, their concerns, then we're going to be having this conversation for years and years again. So I think those moments of really replacing and being a little bit more restorative help school and help students feel like I see myself in what we're doing. You see me as a human being, and I now feel seen, heard, and known. So now I'm going to show up and make better choices.
I got a new assistant principal in October, and I'm so grateful for her to transition from the classroom and come to the leadership side of the work. One of the things that she's done since October is morning meeting every morning in the cafeteria during breakfast. We have what we call prep rocks, which are our character traits, and each week we pick a prep rock that we're going to focus on, and she spends time during that breakfast block talking about the prep rock trait that we're focused on, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what we expect to see. And when we started tracking data from our data tracking system for behavior, we noticed that the prep rocks that we focused on had an increase in positive behavior. So the kids are listening. And then we also spend time making it right. So if you get in trouble, let's say for being disrespectful, you have to make it right. And we spend a lot of time talking about, we understand where you were coming from and why you felt like you needed to be disrespectful, but let's talk about the other perspective. Now, do you think you need to go and make it right? And we'll give them a chance to think about it, and they'll say, yes, ma'am, and they'll go make it right. We send them on back to class. But it takes a lot of time teaching teachers how to be empathetic, how to be concerned, how to get to the root cause of the behavior, how to understand that just because something is disrespectful or a negative behavior in our eyes doesn't mean for that student that that's a disrespectful or negative behavior. So we take a lot of time, and Dr. Moss has been a mentor of mine for the last 4 or 5 years, and so a lot of things that he did at Bruce as a principal, I brought it to my principalship, and I'm just so grateful to sit on this stage with you.
I'm the Dean of Students and Families. One of my jobs is that I hold detention. And so this last year as assistant dean, I did it, and we was just sitting there, and they were looking at me, and I was looking at them, and I was looking at them looking at me. And that's what we did. By saying nothing, your cell phone was up here. This year, I want to change things around. So I follow a motivational speaker, and he uses these things called quote cards. And so what I did is I bought quote cards, get 365 of them for like $9. And so I bought those, and when I'm in detention, when I hold it, I read the quote card. Then I give every student a sheet of paper, and I want them to write down their response to what their quote is for the day. And then they talk, and they tell me, like, from their heart, the bottom of their heart, what they feeling and what their card make them feel. And I've seen, a decrease, sometimes an increase in detention because students are talking about what we're doing in detention. And I'm not trying to make detention fun, but, it's becoming a situation where they may not be able to be heard at home, in the classroom, but you're going to be heard in detention, which is a different way to think about things, in general. And so I also wanted to have a more of a restorative view of detention. So that's why I did it that way.
Wow. Terrence and I were in high school together. This detention is different.
Yeah, it was different. I didn't spend much time in detention.
Me neither. I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, Kelly, there's something I wanted to point out, and again, this brother mentioned detention. We are in a crisis, though, in Memphis and Shelby County. We have 2 out of 10 students are reading at grade level. 2 out of 10 students are doing math at grade level. So, this is a real problem, and when you talk about connecting the dots to our criminal justice system, that is why this is an issue. So, I don't want people to forget the data and the dire reality that we're in. We can fix it, and I believe in it, but when you have that type of landscape, you're going to have a lot of issues in the community. Now, on the other side of that, Kappa Alpha Psi has Kappa League, the world-famous Kappa League. But here's what I want to challenge all of my brothers and sisters tonight to do. We all know black men who either would be great teachers, who are in their current careers, and maybe they could do something different and they could impact lives. Because part of the problem is there aren't enough black men in our buildings that aren't coaches or they're not deans. And so what the Divine Nine can do, and I think this would go a long way, if there's a young brother that you think would be a great teacher, have him call Dr. Patrick Washington. He runs Man Up. It's a pipeline program that is looking for black men to go through non-traditional certifications to become teachers. Have them go through TFA. If you may be married to a brother of Omega Psi Phi or Kappa Alpha Psi, and you think, hey, you know what? You're not enjoying this career? Think about this, because that is part of our problem, is that we don't have enough role models that are teaching math. We don't have enough role models that are history teachers in our schools in Memphis, because that could easily turn the tide, not just teaching them something, but also being a mentor, not just 1 hour after school, which, much respect to all of the programs that we all do that mentor, but our babies need it every hour. They need it 6 hours a day. Maybe it's 4 hours if we change the school day around, right? But I think that could go a long way. So if you know somebody that could be a great teacher, encourage them to go through a teaching pipeline or become a teacher, because we don't have enough black men in our classrooms in Memphis and Shelby County.
Excellent point. Thank you for that. That's a great way to transition back to a core question about, the basics of education, the math, the English, the science. Low-income families make up about 59% of Memphis Shelby County schools. According to Chalkbeat, those students are less likely to have access to advanced coursework. What can we do to level the educational playing field for these students?
The simple answer is simple but not easy. Offer those classes in their schools. My husband and I graduated from Central class of 2004. Our senior year was full of AP classes. My cousin did not graduate from Central, and I'm not going to say where she graduated from, but she had 0 opportunities to take AP classes. Where's the equity in that? We have smart kids in our underserved communities. South Memphis has geniuses. Binghamton has geniuses. Riley Frazier has geniuses. Those schools typically do not offer dual enrollment courses, AP courses, access to those classes for our students. So the simple answer is find some people to teach those classes, put those classes in those schools so that our students can have those opportunities.
Interesting that's not equitable across the board. Like, why in certain schools and not others?
Well, and Kelly, part of the challenge is when you have a district that has 90,000 kids and the community populations are evolving and moving quite a bit, you have lots of schools that are underpopulated. And so one of the things that we could do is if we concentrated more students in fewer buildings, you could offer more of those classes to a larger number of students. And that's something that the district is working on, and I think we as a community need to continue to push them to not just have 3 schools in a neighborhood just because that's what everybody remembers, but maybe one school that has all of these great offerings is better for our community in the long run.
At some point. I do have another question for Eve and Mario. Okay, and this is just really quick here. We're running out of time, but they want to know how much money would your school need for a viable school with STEM programs or coding? Is there a number? Is there something that the Divine Nine or organization could work towards? I was like, if we had this, is it paying for a teacher? What does that look like?
Our school budget currently is a little bit over $1 million, and that includes student rewards, curriculum and instructional materials, and teacher salaries. And so if we had another $1 million, I'm challenging my 7-year-old. He's a math whiz. $1 million would get us not just the materials and the technology that we need to implement a good STEM coding curriculum, but it'll hire a teacher or 2 that can implement those things with fidelity for us.
Thank you.
And the average per pupil in Memphis is about $9,000 per student.
Mm-hmm.
But if we think about how much it costs to go to MUS or St. George's or a private school, that's more like $15,000 or $20,000 a year. There you go. So Kelly,
I think we have some parents. Is it 25, 21,
I was being
22?
generous. But I say that to say this is why making sure we can allocate more public resources, either from the city of Memphis or from Shelby County. I don't see any commissioners or city council members in the room, but if we can get a greater allocation to supplement the 9,000 that our students are currently getting, then that 1 million easily turns into 2 million. Because the money is there. We just have to make sure that we're pushing on the right areas on the political side to ensure that our babies, our black babies in particular, are getting those resources in our community.
I'm hearing advocacy as a huge part that even beyond just the dollars, which it comes down to dollars and cents, but advocacy as well. This has been an eye-opening discussion. Chief Davis, I just want to give you an opportunity. You said you were going to sit back and listen. So you've listened. Just give us your final thoughts.
Well, a lot has been said this evening that really resonates with me because, I'm older than everybody on this stage, I'm sure. And when I went through high school, it really made me think about some of the things that Archie just finished talking about making school fun. We enjoyed going to school. We had opportunities to go to machine shops and, sewing classes and home economics and, opportunities I graduated from a school of performing arts, and school was fun. So it made everything else, part of that fun too. We enjoyed being in class. We enjoyed, the experiences. And I think school has gotten so academic to a point where we have lost, touch with the creativity and the talent, the natural talent that some of our children have, and not giving them an opportunity to be creative in their spaces. I can't speak for the school systems, but I think there's some opportunities for us to really think outside of the box. As we talk about children that know how to reprogram cars, if we channeled that energy someplace else or hone that talent in some other way and give our young people an opportunity to be something else, see something else, touch and feel and do do something other than what they've been exposed to, I think there's great opportunities. And I think the Divine Nine, and I'm so grateful for everyone who participated tonight, because all of us have this civic mindset, this desire to want to do better for our community. Outside of this uniform, we volunteer. We want more for our communities. We don't want to be segregated from the community. So I look forward to doing more work with the Divine Nine to be a force multiplier. How do we raise money for schools that need $9,000 for one child to do something different? How do we get corporate to help us raise money, for the communities that are less served?
Excellent point. I hope as we wrap up this panel that for the Divine Nine that are listening, for community partners that are listening, I hope that you are inspired. This is called Critical Conversations, and we want to talk about it. We want to do something. And the beautiful part about these organizations, these century-old organizations that have been around for so long, a lot of you probably have programs already in place that's doing a lot of these things. Maybe 3 or 4 are just showing up to the committee meetings or showing up to the actual schools, inspiring and getting them involved in maybe tweaking some of those programs to some of the needs you heard from Judge Sugarman and Chief Davis and our esteemed panel here. So I hope we take this back and move forward. It really is a critical moment in Memphis history happening right now. We gotta move. And this is a great group of people to make that happen. On behalf of our panelists and the Department of the Kazukian, we are all very grateful for those who took the time to come out and to those who took the time to share their questions and concerns. If we did not get to your question, we will try to address some of those via social media platforms. Best in Blue on Facebook and Best in Blue MPD on Instagram. Follow both for more information and get answers to some of the questions we were unable to answer. Stay tuned for the next Critical Conversation event and for the launch of the Best in Blue podcast and Breaking Bread with the Chief, featuring Dr. J. Lawrence Turner, the senior pastor of Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church, a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, if I know that right. Activist and entrepreneur Keedron Franklin, and Dana Wilson, Executive Director of Bridges. Thank you again to our panelists, our D9 folks in the building. Y'all still in the building? Y'all still here? I hear you, I hear you. To St. Paul Baptist Church and Pastor Davis, First Lady Davis of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I didn't shout you out earlier. And to the Kazukian production team for holding it down. Until next time, be safe, be blessed. We'll see you next time. Have a good evening.